So blended learning is when there's a shift for a portion of the day to an online environment. The most common blended learning model is a rotational model. There are some schools like Rocket Ship where students will rotate into a lab and then into a classroom. There are others like Mike's school at KIPP Empower where there's a classroom rotation where kids are rotating through different stations. So welcome Mike Kerr from KIPP Empower LA.
Great, thank you. It's good to be here. Perfect, great. So good afternoon, I am Mike Kerr. I am the principal of KIPP Empower Academy, which is in Los Angeles, California. I'm happy to be here with you guys today. I want to give you a little background information about our school. So we are located in South Central Los Angeles. We have about 330 students. We're K through 2 right now. We're in our 3rd year. Right now in South Central Los Angeles, only 4% of freshmen in high school will graduate from college. So our mission in KIPP Los Angeles, KIPP LA, is to get all of our students to and through college because the track record in our neighborhood schools is not very strong. 91% of our students do qualify for free and reduced price meals at our schools. To walk through our model, I first want to take a step back and go over what you see in a traditional classroom. We just heard about what's going on in one district in North Carolina and how far out of the norm they are compared to what's going on across the country. If you walk into most high schools, most middle schools, and even the majority of elementary schools across the country, you walk into a classroom, you see one teacher teaching a lesson to a whole class of students all at once. It's very difficult to do. What you end up having to do as a teacher is teach to the middle of the class and try to differentiate to those who are more advanced in the room and also try to differentiate down to students who are struggling in the classroom. At any given time, you have about a third of the students for whom the lesson is too easy and they're bored. Another third of the students in the classroom, it's a bit too far out of their reach right now, and so they're frustrated. Only about a third of the students will actually feel like the lesson is just right for them. So our goal, of course, is to get our kids to and through college, and we feel like this model is outmoded, antiquated, and is not right for our students. Before coming to California, I was the principal of a school in Brooklyn, New York, the Achievement First Crown Heights Elementary School. And as the founder of that school, I wanted to have our school's model be about small group instruction. I remember being that student in a classroom growing up in New Jersey and being bored because my teacher was delivering one lesson to the whole class all at once. And so what I had the money to do in New York is to actually hire 2 teachers per classroom. So in any given classroom in New York City, I was able to have 2 teachers. So to have one teacher who could focus on the students who are maybe more advanced in the room, giving them instruction at their just right level. Another teacher could focus on students who were maybe struggling a bit more but needed instruction in a different way at their level. And we can make sure they're constantly getting challenged and pushed to get the instruction they need to meet their needs. With this model of having 2 teachers in a room in New York City, we were able to far outperform the local district, the city, the state, and the wealthier suburbs outside of our school district. And at my school in New York, 80% of our kids qualified for free and reduced price lunches. So again, we had great results in New York. 99% of our kids were proficient when they left us in 4th grade in reading, and 100% of our kids were proficient in math, with 70% of them scoring the advanced category. So we had a great thing going at our school in New York, and by our 5th year, I trained my dean to take over, and I moved to California and was in for a nice surprise. Not like I didn't know the funding situation in California was different, but when you actually are living there and experiencing it, you get a chance to see just how different it is. In LA, I get about 38% of the funding that I did in New York City. I got 38% per child of what I had in New York. What I was banking on when I got there was what we had used in our previous elementary schools. Previously, we used a model of having 20 students in a classroom with one teacher because California subsidized having lower class sizes through what's called class size reduction funding. However, in the fall of 2009, when I was getting ready to start the planning phase for the school, they cut that for new charter schools. So existing charter schools and public schools were grandfathered in, but new schools, including mine, would no longer get that expected revenue. So for me, that was about $112,000 in revenue that vanished before our school even opened the doors. Now, To do this, I did not want to obviously I couldn't afford to have 2 teachers in a room like I did in New York. I went from 5 classes of 20, and I had to go to 4 classes of 28 students in a room. So we had to dramatically increase our class sizes in order to make this happen, which is actually what's going on in many school districts all across the country, particularly in Texas, Florida, and California, where the funding is quite low by comparison with the rest of the country. So we have 1 fewer class per grade. By doing that, we have 1 fewer teacher to hire, 1 fewer classroom to get the materials, supplies, and furniture for. And what we did is we have 4 classes of 28 with 15 laptops in every single classroom. So we don't have a lab, and I'd love to have our kids take a laptop home, but I don't trust 5-year-olds right now with a laptop. Maybe when they get older I will, but not yet. By doing so, by going from 5 classes of 20 to 4 classes of 28, the Dell Foundation did a study of our school last year and saw how over the first 2 years, the additional student revenue per class, by being more efficient with how many students we have in the room, by having 2 fewer teachers per grade, so instead of having 4 teachers, we have, instead of having 5 teachers, we have 4. By having that financial benefit, obviously there's costs involved because we have more technology to purchase and more software as well. We have a savings of $965 per student. So for many districts across the country, and for our school in particular, it really helped us meet our bottom line. And me as an administrator, it helped us remain fiscally solvent and be able to open up our school and stay in existence, particularly as every single year in California, we're facing more and more cuts. Now, with this model, I did not want to go back to say, okay, well, look, folks, we can only have 28 students in a classroom. It's going to be really difficult to try and make any kind of model of small group instruction work. I did not want to have to go back to do something like this. Again, students should deserve to be taught at their just right level, to be challenged with what's appropriate for them. So the way we made it work is I actually, all of my administrative team, and I do have a couple floater teachers who can push into the classrooms during certain parts of the day. I can't afford to have that second teacher in the room during the day, but I can have a second body, a second administrator, a second floating teacher in the room during certain parts of the day to really make sure we have smaller groups during reading and during math. So if we split a class in half, as you see on the left, I can have half the class with 1 teacher, half with the other teacher. If I split the class into thirds like we do during reading, I have one group with 1 teacher, 1 group with another, and the other group is on the computers using adaptive technology. So what they're doing on the computers is they're engaging with programs that will cycle them forward if they're accelerating, and if they're zooming ahead, it'll keep going with them because it constantly assesses where they are. If they're struggling, it'll circle back and make sure they're mastering skills before it takes them back to where they need to be. So it's completely adaptive to what their needs are, and it also can really help meet a need in our classroom for our kids. Now this occurs during certain parts of the day. But it's actually quite rare, and I'll show you in a minute what it actually looks like for the majority of the day. So we can, during certain parts, particularly during reading, have that second body in the room, that second adult in the room. And it looks like this. We have 1 teacher in 1 corner on the rug with her group. We have another at a U-shaped or a horseshoe table with her group on the, over there, and the rest of the kids are at their computers. If it's say a 1st or 2nd grade room, when we have students become more independent, then we can actually have students in the computers as well as working independently at their desks in the room. And what they do is they rotate from 1 teacher to the computers to the other teacher. Okay. However, in a 1st grade and 2nd grade room, there's in particular there's parts of the day where we only have 1 adult in the room. So that's where we really need to make sure that rotation takes place. And it looks like this. Again, you can divide the class in half. Half the class can be with 1 teacher. The other half are on the computers. Or you can split the kids into 3 groups with 1 group with 1 teacher, 1 group on the computers, and the other group working independently, either on a project together or reading independently together. By doing so, I can ensure to all of our parents that even though we have 28 students in a classroom, that in reading, writing, math, and science, your student, your child, will never be in a group larger than 14. So 14-to-1 ratio, which far surpasses what most public schools can offer their students. In particular, when we can divide the class into thirds, whereas in some cases even into fourths, we actually can get maybe a 6-to-1 ratio of the child to the adult, which is great. Now we're going to take a look and see what it looks like in our classroom. Here is one of our teachers working with her small group. As you can see, she's got kids working independently next to her. But I think our video is going to really help portray this a bit better for us.
When the California budget crisis hit, we lost out on a key source of funding known as class size reduction. New and growing charters didn't have access to this pool of funding.
In essence, we lost about $200,000 from the state. So to make up for that, we had to increase our class sizes from 5 classes of 20 to 4 classes of 28. However, we didn't want to have that adversely affect the quality of education our students received.
We had to come up with a new and innovative way to provide high-quality education to our children here in South Los Angeles.
So we chose to adopt the blended learning model for our kids. Blended learning means that our students both learn from the teachers as well as from the computers to make sure our students are in small groups for the 4 core content areas.
Our blended learning model has 3 configurations. During science and writing, half of the class rotates between the lead teacher and the computers. In reading, we divide the class into 3 groups that rotate between 2 teachers and a computer station. During math, the class is divided between 2 teachers who may utilize the computers for additional support. This allows the classrooms to have 2 adults in the room for most of the day and ensures a 14-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio or better.
I didn't know what small group instruction was before I came to KIPP. It was always having a class of 30 to 35 kids and kind of teaching to the middle, hoping that the high kids don't get too bored and the low kids kind of catch up.
So the small group instruction really allows us to differentiate our lesson plans for the students no matter what their needs are. They're rotating in specific centers and stations, as well as small groups with their teachers, be it an intervention teacher or even their classroom teacher.
Keeping computers inside the classroom rather than utilizing a separate computer lab is also critical to providing a cohesive learning environment. The computers can be utilized throughout the day in various subjects as needed. This model ensures that the students working on the computers are integrated in the classroom setting with their teachers and classmates.
The technology in the classroom serves 3 roles. First, it frees up the teachers to work with small groups. Second, it develops the students' 21st century skills. Third, because it uses adaptive technology, it will zoom the students forward if they're accelerating, and it'll cycle back if they're struggling.
The computers are not intended to replace the teacher. They're intended to focus our attentions better and more systematically on what are the needs of each of our individual children.
They come in a lot of times not having any experience with the computer. I teach them how to log in and how to develop basic computer skills.
By having our students rotate on and off the computers throughout the day and working in small groups with their teachers, they're receiving a much better education and they're loving the learning process. And so these are some of the results that we've received also over the past 2 years. In our first year, at the end of our first year, our kindergartners, 96% of them scored proficient or advanced on the MAP test, which is a nationally normed test in reading as well as in math. A majority of our students, as you can see, scored in the top quartile on the MAP test. That's in our first year. Our second year, this is a different test, just to show that our results are both of our different tests as well. This is on the STEP test, which comes from the University of Chicago. 91% of our students scored proficient or advanced on this test as well. And you can see the majority of our kids, 68%, actually were in blue, so they're in the advanced category. So we're really trying to get our kids to, again, on that path to and through college to be accelerated. And by having a teacher working with them in small groups as well as working on the computers, they're able to really make sure their needs are met and they're not sitting back bored, they're not sitting there frustrated, they're getting exactly what they need. Also in terms of our teacher and parent satisfaction, our school, out of the 125 KIPP schools across the country, we ranked 5th in overall parent satisfaction and 6th in overall teacher satisfaction. And what plagues many schools across the country is having teacher retention challenges. And so for us in our 3rd year, knock on wood, we have not lost a single teacher yet. So that's really exciting for us. And teachers are finding that their job is much easier for them because they're able to work with smaller groups. They're not having to try and teach these mammoth lessons to the whole class all at once. but instead they're getting a chance to work with their kids and get to know them better. In terms of those implications for teachers, as I mentioned, the teachers are working with more manageable group sizes, so not working with all the kids in the class at once, trying to create one lesson that's going to meet the needs of every single person in the room. They can instead really plan for the kids in their groups, and they can collaborate with other teachers who have similar groupings to make sure they're working together to meet the needs of their kids. They're getting to know their kids much better than they would be before. They're also getting lots of data because both offline and online data. When they're getting a chance to meet with the students more individually, they're getting a chance to assess them more regularly. And also on the computers, our kids are getting a chance to take assessments on the computers, and that gives us a lot of data as to how they're progressing both with our online content as well as with our offline content. Also, because of all that extra data, we can really inform our parents better about how their students are progressing in our classroom. And also, we can enhance their learning, particularly if they have computer access at home. And I'd love for our kids to have that access. I'd love to put a laptop in every home to make sure that our kids can continue to further their learning at home. Although we have some challenges in South Central Los Angeles right now in terms of internet access and bandwidth. Also, our instruction time gets maximized because our schedule is so rigid that our teachers really need to make sure they're staying within those blocks of time because of having people rotating in and out to cover reading or to cover math and to push in and be that second body in the room. In terms of our students, our kids are getting instruction at their just right level, so our kids are performing better than what they would have been doing had they not been in this program. Again, they're not feeling that frustration level, not feeling that boredom that you see in most classrooms across the country. And again, I can promise every child that they're going to be in a group that's 14 or fewer in reading, writing, math, and science, which is a really great, important promise to be able to share with a family. Our kids are enjoying the learning process. They love being on the computers because not only is it fun, but it's also engaging, and they're learning a lot at the same time. And they're building the 21st century skills as well. We've got students who are going home and actually sharing, who are showing their families, showing their parents how to use the computers. I'm guessing you're seeing a similar thing in North Carolina as well, where parents are coming to school thanking us and are now saying, hey, I want to go back to school because of what their child is actually teaching them how to do. The Common Core test is coming up in a matter of just a few years. And so for our students, we're able to actually start preparing them for the Common Core now. Our second graders are typing, and when I started this program at our school, I never thought that in second grade we'd be showing our kids how to be typing, 10 words per minute, 20 words per minute, on and on, which is really great. And our kids are doing a lot of work in second grade on nonfiction reading, so we're able to really build those skills that the kids are going to need to be successful, both in the Common Core and in their college and careers. In the second grade, we're giving the kids a little bit more ownership of what they're doing on the computer so they can take ownership and learn the kind of skills and research the kind of things that are really important to them, they want to learn about. Now, the last thing before I open up the Q&A is I often get asked what the student experience looks like. So I'm going to share that with you right now. When our students do log in to the computers, their screen will look like this. And the reason that we have to use a system like this is because when we have 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, we end up using a lot of different programs. So we use 2 or 3 different reading programs, 2 or 3 different math programs, and to have a 5-year-old have to learn a different password and username for each of those programs is a lot to ask. So we try to simplify it for them. So all they do is they go in, and they simply click on that button. They click on what their class name is, and they go in and click at their student name. And they have a password that is just theirs. So it's their own little password. It's a picture password, so it makes it easy for them. They don't have to learn some kind of lengthy password with all these letters and whatnot. And once they click on the images that are theirs, it takes them into the programs. So they get a chance to choose the programs they want to use at their school. And so this is ST Math, which is one of our favorite programs that kids love to use. And it takes them straight through. And they're in. And there's no need to have to type in their own username, their own password, to have to wait and do all that kind of stuff. It forgoes that whole process. So by having a single sign-on like this, it makes it really easy for our kids to use the program. Because again, we don't want to lose any instruction time for our kids. And with that, I'm going to log off so that if Cedric is on his computer right now in his classroom. He is not wondering what's going on. And I'll take some questions if you have them. Yes, sorry, I guess you.
No, go ahead, Anna.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned that there's a lot of parent satisfaction. Is it because of the computers? What would you say is the thing that makes them so pleased about this?
So let me, why don't you just
Sure.
quickly paraphrase the question so
Go ahead.
you get it for the tape?
Got you. So what is sort of the reason behind the parent satisfaction? Is it the computers or is it other things? Obviously, the computers are just one aspect of what we're doing, and so I do think that there's a synergy involved with our school. I do think that we've got great teachers at our school, so I think that having a teacher that really cares about their child is really important to them. But I do know that the kids really enjoy the learning process. They enjoy both the one-on-one time they have with their teacher, which again they wouldn't experience in a more traditional environment, but also they're loving to be able to go on the computers and learn as well. And for a lot of our programs, we do let the kids go on at home to continue to further their learning, which is really exciting. We don't do that for all the programs because sometimes we don't know if it's them or their brother that's on the computer at home. So that's kind of one of the things that we have to work on. Yeah, our parents are really enjoying it for a whole host of reasons, I think.
Yes.
When the children log on, do they go straight to like an individualized learning plan? And are the problems that they're going to be looking at, are they Common Core? Or are they an area of difficulty and it's like remediating or a little bit of everything?
Okay, good question. So asking when the students log on, is there a plan for them that's preset? And then asking if it's Common Core aligned or if it's remedial. So there's no plan. It's not like they log in and it takes them through steps, which actually you'll hear in the next presentation of a school that does that for their students. For us, being at the elementary level, the content is not, being that we're working with kindergarten through second grade kids, a lot of our schools across the country that are doing this kind of thing are noticing that the software products that are out there aren't really as strong as they are in the secondary level for our kids. And so what we're doing is we're having the students go on certain programs that we know will meet their needs. And in many cases, it can tie, if we want to, we can have it tied directly into what they're doing in that class that day with that teacher. So a teacher can actually override this system so they can go and do independent practice. They can do independent work that's aligned with what they're doing that day in the classroom. Other days, they can just go and just zoom ahead or be remediated if they can. For the most part, we do try to make sure we have programs that are Common Core aligned, but I will say everyone loves to say they're Common Core aligned, and it only was a matter of months, or a few weeks ago, that the Common Core, at least my consortium of the Common Core, actually released what the questions would look like. So those who said they were Common Core aligned before the questions got released, I kind of say, are you really Common Core aligned if you don't know what the questions are in the Common Core? I mean, really? So that's not as important for me about being Common Core aligned because I think that needs to be vetted more in terms of what it actually means.
So if the child has difficulty, they're working through a problem, and they have difficulty, what can they do at that place?
Okay.
Are they allowed to raise their hand and ask their teacher help, or what do they do?
Good question. So the question is if a student's having a difficulty with the program they're using, what can they do? So there is actually a button on the top where they can raise their hand. And so if an administrator is in a room or if our technology specialist who does rotate between the rooms, if we see that, and we have actually a dashboard that shows whose hand is raised, we know we can go to that child if we need to. But in many cases, the program will actually catch that and will then take them back and will reteach something to them. Okay, but it depends on the program. Some programs do that more seamlessly. Others may require more of an adult intervention. And so in those cases, then we have an adult, whenever we get a chance, we'll sit down with that child and we'll work with them.
Okay, another question? I think we have time for two more. Yes.
Yes. So what percentage of the students' learning experience is mediated through the technology in terms of learning instruction versus practice? And what percentage of the time is instruction versus practice when working face-to-face with the teacher?
Okay, so you're asking what percent of the time, both with the teacher and with the computer is actual instruction versus practice, right? So it's going to depend on where they are in that unit. So if it's something new, if they're learning something new, then the majority of the time on the computer, the majority of the time with the teacher, will be actually in the teaching cycle. But once they actually have been exposed to that and are learning that and have had some degree of practice with that, then it'll transform and move more towards practice. In terms of, so it's going to depend on where they are in the program or where they are in that particular unit. In terms of the school day, 11% of the day for our kindergartners is spent in front of laptops, and 16% for first and second grade students. So it's about 90 minutes for first and second grade kids. In kindergarten, it's about 60 minutes. I felt that was enough time that was age appropriate for our kids. So they're on the computers for about 20 to 30 minutes at a time in kindergarten. And first grade's about the same time. In second grade, their stamina is a bit longer, and we feel they can be on there for 25 to 30 minutes at any given time. Beyond that, I just think it's a little too much right now, personally, because again, we're sort of easing into this and want to make sure that our kids feel like it's fun, but it's also just one component of our school day. We do have a longer school day, so kids do get a chance to do hands-on learning in science, hands-on learning in math, hands-on learning in other subjects. We want to make sure we have a good blend of all that.
All right. Other question? All right. Yes.
Back to the finances, just for a second, when you were talking about when you went to California and you saw it was $5,000 or something per capita expense. Is that still the budget that you were working within, the constraints that you're working within financially, fiscally?
Yes, yes. It's gone down a little bit each year, and it's looking like for next year it's going to be capped because of Prop 30 passing at the state level. So we should actually have that frozen for one more year. But up until now, each year it's gone down a bit.
So the achievements that you were showing us in your presentation are spending less than $6,000 a child.
Yes.
In the most expensive city in the country. Would you thank Mike with me? That is, it's an incredible story. One of the frustrating things is that you referred to is that the tool set is not quite where we'd like it to be. And what Mike and his team have done is really put a front end on a number of different tools, and they're making it work.